It's the Media Chatroom, and we're back with more hot headlines. And now we're about to get into the lawsuit that Cassie has filed against P. Diddy, Puffy Combs. Y'all, everybody is going crazy right now because of everything that Cassie has listed in this lawsuit. She filed this lawsuit on November 16th, and it did not take long for the internet to go up in flames. She's alleging everything from sexual abuse in the form of trafficking all the way to physical abuse. So we'll definitely be going over that, and we'll also be going over everyone that has come out to support Cassie during this time. So before we get into all that, I'm gonna need you guys to make sure that you like this video and share it with everyone that you know. Also, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and become an official Chatty Patty lover, and I promise you're gonna love it. And also make sure that you turn on your notification bell so that you know when we drop our next video. Now y'all, let's get into this court document. So y'all, after being in a public relationship for what seemed like maybe over a decade, Cassie has decided to sue Sean Diddy Combs for sexual and physical abuse that she endured during the relationship. Now, in a preliminary statement, one of the things that they highlight is the Lifetime Achievement Award that Diddy received from BET back in 2022. And the speech that he made is going to set the tone for what is listed in the document. Because one of the moments in the speech, he thanks Cassie for holding him down during the dark time. And the dark times that he was experiencing seems to have been inflicted upon her.
Keep it 100 with y'all. I was in a dark place for a few years, you know what I'm saying? And I have to give a special thank you, shout out, thank you, all that love. I gotta give a special thank you to the people that was really like there for me. Bishop T.D. Jakes, my chief of staff, Christina Coram, KK, Lorianne Gibson, keeping me free. Yeah, and also Cassie for holding me down in the dark times. Love.
Now, I will not talk about everything that is listed into the document because it is 35 pages long and there's so many people that's covering. But I just want to go ahead and highlight some of the things that are listed in the document. The way that it's laid out, he is definitely looking like a predator. Because although she is of legal age, it signifies the age gap between the two, the employment status between the two in his hierarchy, the jealous and possessive rages that he had as it related to her, and a lot of fear tactics, which was used to make her have unwanted sex with other people while he watched and got off, exclude people from her life, and keeping her silent so that no one can know of the physical abuse that she was enduring. So y'all, let's start off with the factual allegations. Part 1. The teenage Miss Ventura meets middle-aged Mr. Combs as her career began. So here they want the judges and the jury to understand the huge age gap between him and her, because she meets him when she's 19 and he's 37. So this goes to set the framework of how easy it can be for her to be lured in and easily manipulated. So line 31 says, Mr. Combs' recognition and glorification of Mrs. Ventura's naivety proved to set the groundwork for his manipulative and coercive romantic and sexual relationship with Mrs. Ventura, a woman nearly 2 decades his junior. So now y'all, let's get into line 34. During hair and makeup leading up to a performance, Mrs. Ventura hairstylist and Mr. Combs makeup artist told Mrs. Ventura that Mr. Combs was interested in Ms. Ventura. Ms. Ventura shrugged off the gossip and in fact expressed disgust even in the large age gap between her and the president of the record label. Now we're hopping into section 2, where Mr. Combs lures Mrs. Ventura into a relationship. So now she's in a relationship with him that she didn't even want to be in, because basically he lured her in and captured her. And we can see that as it goes into line 39, where it says, despite her clear rejection of Mr. Combs' advances, Mr. Combs continued to demand that Mrs. Ventura spend time with him, including for a weekend at Mr. Combs' residence in Miami, and for nights out in New York City. So line 40, on one particular night around September 2007, Mr. Combs insisted on taking Mrs. Ventura out. Ms. Ventura acquiesced, fearing that rejecting Mr. Combs' request would have repercussions for her album deal with Mr. Combs and his company, Bad Boy Records. So 42 goes on to show that there's more naivety in how he starts to introduce her into pills, and this is how she starts to get lured in. He handed her a pill and told her to take it. When Mrs. Ventura asked what the pill was, Mr. Combs dismissed her and told her she would like it. She later learned the pill was ecstasy, something Miss Ventura had never before tried and did not want to try. This was the first time Mr. Combs got Mrs. Ventura high. So 45 starts to show some exact tactics that he used in order to start to lure her. In early fall 2007, Mr. Combs flexed his power and influence when he paid a promoter to create a fake flyer for a party hosted by Mrs. Ventura. This fake posting allowed Mrs. Ventura to have an excuse to go to Miami, Florida, and get her away from her boyfriend by using a disguise of a legitimate event she had to attend. Mrs. Ventura was stunned at how easy Mr. Combs was able to recruit others to lie for him. And just like before, we already know she wants to say no, but she can't because he's the owner of the record label. 47. During the trip to Miami, Mr. Combs provided Mrs. Ventura with copious amounts of drugs. She began to become more intoxicated than she ever had before, and her intoxication lasted throughout the entire weekend. As she wanted Mr. Combs to continue to support her career, she felt she could not refuse Mr. Combs urging her to take more drugs. After providing her with drugs, Mr. Combs had sexual intercourse with Mrs. Ventura during this trip. So y'all, it sounds like after that weekend, they were just together. So Section 3 talks about how Mr. Combs exerts control over Mrs. Ventura's career and personal life. So 49 still talks about how some of the age difference exerts their power and control, including his status and his position in the entertainment industry. 50. Mr. Combs' aggressive and demanding approach to those he worked with made it impossible for anyone to challenge him, and Mrs. Ventura soon learned that Mr. Combs insisted on blind loyalty from everyone in his inner circle. So not only did he control her, but he controlled everybody around her. 54. Around 2008 or 2009, Mr. Combs began to rent an apartment in Manhattan for Miss Ventura. The apartment was within walking distance of Mr. Combs' New York residence. Now, y'all, her parents was worried, but then at the same time, they was proud. And this control pattern continued because in 55, around 2010, he did the same thing in Los Angeles, brought her an apartment that was 5 minutes away from his home. And 57 says that he was able to do all this by basically keeping her laced with drugs. The more drugs she took, the more complacent and compliant she was. And so in 2008, that's when he started to introduce her to opiates. And not only did he start to introduce her to them, but he started to get her to get them for him whenever he ran out. So y'all, let's jump down to 59, and then you start to see how really controlling he is. It's crazy. On multiple occasions, Mr. Combs had Mrs. Ventura personal medical records sent directly to his email, HIPAA violation. For instance, when Mrs. Ventura began experiencing memory loss, potentially due to the excessive drug use and a head injury caused by Mr. Combs' beating, as described below, her MRI results were provided directly to Mr. Combs. Mr. Combs also repeatedly arranged for his staff to drive Ms. Ventura to certain doctor appointments. So imagine how much drugs they probably were doing on a daily basis in order for her to start to experience possibly memory loss. Or how many times she was getting hit in the head, man. Okay, so Section 4, Mr. Combs and Ms. Ventura relationship becomes violent and abusive. So let's jump down to 64. Over the next decade, multiple times each year, Mr. Combs would violently beat Ms. Ventura, leaving bruises on her body. After every incident in which he beat Ms. Ventura, Mr. Combs would use money and power to orchestrate expensive efforts to hide the evidence of his abuse, included by hiding Mrs. Ventura in hotels for days at a time to let her bruises heal. So this just continues to show the cycle of how when he would beat her, he would continue to always buy her gifts in order to try to smooth things over. And y'all, there was a time when there was an article written about her and her mom tried to call and check up on her and she wanted to go home. He wouldn't let her, but her mom did hear about the abuse. Check out line 74. By Mr. Combs' own admission, his relationship with Ms. Ventura was like Bobby and Whitney, a clear acknowledgement of the unequal power dynamic and excessive domestic violence that permitted in their relationship. And y'all, don't forget about that acceptance speech that he did at the BET Awards, because he definitely thanked Bobby because he looked up to him.
I gotta thank the king, Bobby Brown. Give it up for Bobby Brown, y'all. Yeah, come on. Hey, yo, he was the first chocolate boy wonder. He gave me a lot of confidence. Sometimes you don't know the people you touch. Bobby, you touch me and I love you.
So in number 5, we're going to start to talk about Mr. Combs forces Mrs. Ventura into sex trafficking. So if y'all can look down at 76, the age is going to be a big thing in this case because they want everybody to get the picture as to how old he was, how young she was, and how those dynamics just automatically impose him to be this experienced predator with this young, innocent girl. So let's jump down to 77. While they say in New York, Mr. Combs told Miss Ventura that he wanted to engage in a fantasy called voyeurism. And this part is going to be considered sex trafficking because remember, he's getting her high and now he's making her have sex with other people. So 78 goes into detail of the first time when he brought in a man and he made them wear masquerades so that they can engage into sex acts. So he refers to these sessions as freak offs or FOs, and these men that he would hire, they would be considered sex workers, y'all. So in 87, they start to list some of the drugs that they would take, which was ecstasy, cocaine, GHB, marijuana, ketamine, and alcohol. So y'all, now that we're getting into 91, 92, 93, it just gives more detail as to how these escapades will be going. And y'all, not only did he make her do them, but he made her record them and then rewatch them. So number 6, Miss Ventura tries to escape Mr. Combs' abuse. So this goes to show the power dynamic again, because every time that she tries to leave, he's always sending a worker of his to come and try to get her to come back. Now here's where Kid Cudi name gets listed. During one of the sessions when she ended up breaking up with Diddy, she ended up getting into a brief relationship with Kid Cudi. So Diddy ended up finding out about that relationship because there was phone calls and emails found between her and Kid Cudi. And once he found out, he placed a manual corkscrew between her fingers and lunged at her. So here's where you're probably going to find a lot of the evidence, because in 111, she says that she went to her parents' home in Connecticut where her mom took pictures of the bruises that Mr. Combs had left on her body. And in 112, it says in February 2012, during Paris Fashion Week, Mr. Combs told Miss Ventura that he was going to blow up Kid Cudi's car, and that he wanted to ensure that Kid Cudi was home with his friends when it happened. And y'all, since this report has came out, Kid Cudi has said that it is true. So y'all, this continues to get worse and worse. So let's go down to the next section, which is number 7, where it says Mr. Combs R's Mrs. Ventura. And all of these give specific instances, maybe like towards the end of the relationship when she was calling it quits and he tried to force himself up on her and proceed to R her. Section 8. Mr. Combs' sexual and physical abuse of Ms. Ventura has caused her lifelong harm. So throughout this whole entire relationship, which is a sum of about a decade, she has endured this immense amount of trauma. And y'all, it ended up being her kids that helped her get a new lease on life. Let's go down to section 141. So except the months that she was pregnant with her children, Ms. Ventura struggled with the addiction to drugs and alcohol. Addictions that were established and fueled by Mr. Combs. So she used substances to drown out the memories of her abuse. Without being intoxicated, she suffered from horrific nightmares of the FOs that she had, as well as the physical abuse. And y'all, it said that she even contemplated committing suicide. So y'all, here's what she's asking the court for: a money judgment for consequential damages, lost wages, earnings, and all other sums of money together with interest on those amounts, according to proof. Money judgment for mental pain and anguish and severe emotional distress. And she has the proof. Punitive and exemplary damages according to proof. Attorney's fees and costs, and pre-judgment and post-judgment interest. And anything else that the court may seem to be just improper. So y'all, that was a lot. So y'all, that is exactly what she's asking the court for. Somehow the media has that this is a $30 million lawsuit. However, that is not true. Diddy's lawyers actually put out a statement stating that that was what they requested before filing a lawsuit, $30 million. However, Diddy said, nope, just go ahead and sue me. Now, Cassie's lawyer did say that Diddy offered her 8 figures to not file the lawsuit. And I'm guessing it was nowhere near the $30 million, so she decides to go ahead and file a suit. Now, y'all, since filing the lawsuit, a lot of people from Bad Boys have been in support of Cassie. The girls from Danity Kane, Dawn Richardson, D Woods, as well as Aubrey O'Day. Now, y'all know she been had her foot on Diddy neck, so she definitely stand in support of Cassie. And of course, y'all know 50 Cent had to get on and do some trolling to Diddy. Now, y'all, another celebrity that's attached to this story is Young Jock. He gives this account a long time ago of when he was with his ex-wife and how they went to Diddy's house. And he randomly just wanted Cassie to shave off her head. So check out this interview, y'all. But also see how he says that she responds to this request.
Cassie, I got it. I want you to shave the side of your head. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, what the kind of drug is this man on? Because I ain't see him do nothing. But that don't mean he ain't on nothing. I didn't see him. I've been with him all day, but that don't mean he ain't on nothing. But I'm just like that. So she's like, what? He's like, yeah, I want to shave it. She said, you want me to cut it low? He said, no. I want it like low, like jock hair. So she looked at me, I looked at her, I was like, you looked at him. He hit the whistle in our face, turned back around and took off. We like, what the? So I'm looking at her, she looking at me. I'm like, Cassie, I know you're not finna do that for real. And she was like, well, if Sean wants it.
So y'all, that definitely supports some of the claims that was listed in this lawsuit. So y'all, don't be surprised if you get subpoenaed. Now, Chatty Patties, it's time to get in those comments. What is going through your mind after listening to everything that's listed in that lawsuit? And based off of everything that you heard, do you think that this is just a lawsuit that Diddy should just settle out of court? And are you guys waiting and wanting to hear a response from Diddy? And do that start to get you thinking about his relationship with Carisha? And do y'all think that Diddy knew this was coming, so that's why he kind of started to play and give those people their publishing back? And let me know if you heard anything else as it relates to this story. Our hearts definitely go out to Cassie and anybody else who may be experiencing domestic violence. Now, before you all leave, make sure that you like and share this video with everyone that you know. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you can become an official Chatty Patty lover, and make sure that you turn on your notification bell so that you know when we drop our next video. As always, I'm going straight to the comments so that I can see what y'all say. Then I'm going back to the headlines so that we can get some more stories to report. So that's going to be all for now. Bye-bye.